Hi, welcome to Place at the Table. I'm super excited to be talking to Natalie Diaz today. It is a beautiful day here in Los Angeles, as I'm sure it is in Arizona, where we'll be talking from. She's an incredible poet laureate, poet, and writer, thinker, artist who I had the pleasure of collaborating with through the Binational Arts Residency in Arizona a few years ago now. And yeah, just super excited to connect with her and be in conversation. It's a pleasure always to be able to work with artists, but then not see them for a few years and be in different places and get to reconnect and kind of share where we are now, and also the impact that working together made. So I'm really excited about that, and also always just excited to spread more light and love on the Binational Arts Residency, because it's such a powerful residency that is run by women, is all women, and it is so deeply connected to community and art making, and is a it was an opportunity to get to know and work with a bunch of fabulous, incredible artists that I had never even heard of or known before, and who are now part of a circle of connections that I have across the country. So, and specifically in Arizona. Hi, yay, Natalie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to set this up.
Yeah, sorry, I was a minute late too, because I'm like right before this, there are a million people running around getting food and craziness happening. So I think we're all ready to go, but there might be some loud noises that happen. So just warning.
No worries.
So I was just sharing with folks that the way we originally met was the Binational Arts Residency, and that I just always love having any excuse to shout that group of fabulous women organizers out, but also to shout out the incredible work that they're doing and continue to do in Arizona, and across the Sonoran Desert and on the border, just because it's work that's so incredibly always evolving and changing and shifting, but also is rooted in a place of love and care and connection always. And so, I think it's not an accident that I have so much love for you, because that's where we met and where we first connected. And so we'll definitely get into that and talk about a little bit about that. But I want to just have you introduce yourself, share who you are, tell a little bit about your story.
Yeah, no, for sure. Gracias for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, so I'm joining you from Phoenix, which is Akama Atham land, so part of my tribe. And then I've been kind of back and forth between Fort Mojave, so which is where I grew up on the reservation there, the Mojave Valley, so right on the Colorado River. So, which is, we met along a river. So,
yes.
That feels very important. But I teach here at Arizona State University. So I teach, I'm known more as a poet, I think. But I come to poetry often through collaborations. So, yeah, and it was really lucky that so you were actually like the first thing I did here.
Really?
Yeah, so Phoenix? In some ways, me landing here, working for this place was, you're a part of that origin story.
Oh, I love it.
Which is really lucky. So, but yeah, otherwise, I mean, I'm just kind of here where, everyone's doing what they're doing in different ways, and renewed ways and exhausted ways. So
yeah, well, and I know that you were I remember you being kind of fresh to Arizona when we first met, and also be thinking about kind of what your next steps were, where you're going, and there was even a little slight possibility of you coming to California, but that never happened. Is that
no?
You got stuck in a good way.
Yeah, stuck in a very good way. I'm actually, sometimes you think what you want, or sometimes things are so bright that you're looking at them in a way that feels like a want, even though the want is not in your body.
Yeah.
There was a moment when I looked up and thought, okay, that's that's a kind of success I should want. And when I went to check it out, I realized like, no,
Not
that's
what you
not what
want.
that's not my body. My body doesn't fit there. My
Yeah.
mind doesn't fit there. But yeah, and I mean, as you know, this is I mean, we call it collaboration, but this space, this land it's just, it's multiple, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
simultaneous. It's many things happening at once, which makes it very like abundant and generous for collaborations. So,
Yep.
you know, there's already so many streams of story that you enter when you arrive that, you know, I feel like there's an energy here that is really lucky.
I
So,
love it. Are you teaching full time right now? Are you?
well, I run the center, so I have that new Center for Imagination in the Borderlands, which we hope to pull you back to us
Yes,
through.
anytime. Let me know.
um, but I do that, so I teach one class a year,
That's great.
and then just have some other projects going on. But
I love
so
it.
I was lucky that I'm not teaching in the fall. I'll teach in the spring, which I think has, you know, it's also been good because I get to kind of support my students who are teaching
Yeah.
and just kind of do some ground support for them and build, you know. I don't know. I mean, you've probably talked about this many times, but um, like we're all like, what does work mean in this digital space?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, what is and maybe even more than work. I'm really interested, especially thinking of you and your relationship to the body
Mm-hmm.
and the language of the body,
Mm-hmm.
like what this space feels like in terms of energy. So like,
Yeah.
how does this space make you tired? How does this
Yeah.
space energize you? Or how does this space, how are you learning to, I guess, express or interpret touch in this space?
Mm-hmm.
Those are things
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because I feel like those have always been a part of my first conversations with you, were all of those things.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting too, because I think in the beginning of being in this virtual space, it was a lot harder. Because I was so used to tapping into the being with people and on a regular basis. And I mean, I used to joke with people that my fix was getting I needed my salsa fix like on a regular basis. So like going out, just going out and getting down and sweating through a couple t-shirts and just feeling connected and feeling alive and feeling like I got to like flow with energy without thinking. Like that was just like yeah, in many ways the salsa floor is like church
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just being in a space of not having contact outside of my nuclear family and being also 24/7 having expectations on my own body and being by my two little people
Yeah.
who are very demanding and wanted all of me all the time, but never feeling like I was getting to fill my own well, like feel that sense of replenishment or rejuvenation or nourishment even. Nourishing in a different way, because in some ways it's also incredibly nourishing to be with them all the time.
Yeah.
They're such incredible gifts, though the way that they think about the world or talk about the world or even imagining things, or there's in some ways there's a real gift to this time because of that. So
Yeah.
but in the beginning I wasn't seeing it like that at all. I wasn't feeling that. I was feeling it as being a huge loss, this
Yeah.
absolute loss of connection. And then but I think that there was a turning point of surrendering where my family came out from New York. My family are also all East Coast, so there's a way that we also relate in this space a lot to one another, and we feel very
Yeah.
close and loving and connected through this space because of being on different coasts. Um, and and yeah, I began doing these conversations, like, and I shared with you, these are like adult conversations that feel so precious and wonderful. And I was talking to a lot of mother artivists too, to try to like just even feel like saw myself reflected, because I was just feeling, you know, um, yeah, just against that separation. But then in the surrendering of it, and the surrendering of, okay, what does it mean to just actually like take this on and be fully here? There's been a lot that's been possible. There's been a lot that's been possible out of that. And I think in some ways been more connections possible in my life as a mother artist in this space than I've been almost feeling less isolated in a weird way,
Yeah.
because I'm both making an active, taking active steps to connect to folks, but I'm also, there's ways that like I couldn't go out at night, or couldn't, necessarily do things, and this is before COVID, that allowed me to be in connection with people because of mothering. But that now it's kind of like, okay, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I can have a conversation with Natalie, like, and I don't have to go out for a coffee or a drink or whatever with you. I can like literally sit here and visit with you in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
while my kids are running around and playing at home.
It's crazy too, like, because you and I both work with space, right? Like,
Yeah.
so my writing very much is engaged with or immersed in what is white space, or what is not yet there till the mark is made, or what of sound is space until you somehow speak into it or move into it. And then you're also working in space. But I think something we always, like, or at least I know something for me that this time has meant, is that we often forget that we need absence.
Yeah.
And we need loss of certain things. So like plants do this, animals do this,
Yes.
like getting, but I feel like we've been taught that to grow is just always an excess of something.
Yes. Yeah.
However, I feel like that's been really lucky, is that, and of course, like some absences are griefs and loss, right? And
yeah.
But there's something about absence that, I mean, we need the absence in order to move into it, right?
Yeah.
And like we need that space. And so, and then I also think, like you were talking about nourishment, and I think that's even something, right? Like you can be overnourished, like you can overwater a plant, right?
You
like
sure can.
You can overeat, like,
yes, you can.
Yeah, and so I think it's it's going to be really interesting to see the ways we move. And I don't know that there's going to be an other side. Like it's not going to be this kind of binary, like, oh, we'll know when we're on the other side. But I do think, like, something I'm trying to be cognizant of is, like, what are those absences, even the ones that don't feel good to me, like, what are those absences, and then what might I make of them, but also what might I preserve of them? That normally I would have tried to fill. And so it makes me think exactly of, like, even right now, like when you and I talk, there's a way that, like, Zoom or these things are not quite built for us because we move too much.
Yes.
So yeah, and so there's like I keep having to put my head down in it because I want to, like, pop up. And so I think even that's interesting, that, like, we're in a space, but we're also seeing the space, and even as we see it, we're trying to fill it somehow. So it's a whole different like sensuality, right? Like, our bodies are different now.
Thicker.
That word. The reason why I have to move is because my cheeks keep filling up.
Oh my gosh! No, I feel lush these days.
Yeah. Abundance, right?
Abundance. Yes.
They have all these. It makes me laugh because they have those, like, Zoom filters, right? But I'm like, I need a native Zoom filter. Like, I need one that, like, does a little something here, and then can do a little something here. Like, I don't want the one that, does the glam shot. I need, like, a little bit of a compression.
just a little here and there. Well, there you go. You need to develop that, Natalie.
Well, for
your other job.
I can hide my cheeks in real life, right? Like, I'll wear like some fancy shoes or something.
Totally.
But
here it's like no hiding.
It's like, dang. It's like where's Natalie's eyes are in there somewhere in her cheeks.
I love it. So somebody said, find me a chin and neck one.
Yeah. And then I'm like, wait, I have this, like, knot on my head that I was never quite aware of. And it's just like,
I know. Well, also lighting is, I mean, I'm learning all kinds of things about, it's funny. I have a whole setup right here like, I don't know if you see all of my towels because like at this time of day, there's like the sunlight comes like shining in. It makes my head look like some kind of bizarre art exhibit, art installation.
It's something else to think about. Just like how, I don't know, like even now, like you say that we are able to kind of connect in this space. It's I mean, it's an entirely extractive space as well. Like, so there's technology and all these things, but I don't know, like I guess we're finding new ways of touch, right? Like, and I don't know what that's like for a dancer to be in this space.
I mean, there's a part of what I feel like when we get to the point where we can actually physically be together and dance in different ways, there's going to be a way that I'm going to eat up and devour that in ways that I just took for granted. Honestly, I just didn't even understand how delicious it was to be able to touch other bodies and connect in that way. And
all the dances are going to be like writhing around each other.
Oh my God. Exactly.
It's going to be like wrapped around one another.
It's funny to think about, exactly how it's going to impact and affect like even people's choreography, or that like there's going to be so much like touch, like connection. But I mean, there's ways even now. So I'm actually, it's crazy. We're still going to be making work coming in this next few months. I'm going to be doing a dance film, and trying to figure out how to have touch inside the dance film safely, but also not make it about COVID, right? Like not make it about having a bunch of masks on in a way that like actually then turns it into, I don't know. I'm like, that's not what I want to talk about, right? Like that's not what I want to make about. So there is a way that, just solving that problem of how do you create movement on film that can be safe and, obviously take care of people's bodies and not put people in harm's way, but also get the communication and the function of being able to touch. So that's a problem I'm trying to solve right now.
Are you all thinking about wearing masks?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about is like maybe having couples like who feel, dance partners, people who partner up on a regular basis and feel comfortable dancing and touching one another, finding couples like that and people who can connect and feel comfortable touching, and then having like 8 to 12 of those people, but then very far away from each other, and maybe like using drone, kind of like the ability to like actually see outside so that you can see connection, but that you see it far enough apart. And I mean, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, but
well, I mean, even like, but I mean, I think that's something, right? Like, I often think about this when I'm anxious, because when I'm like in this kind of like clutches of anxiety, the air bothers me. Like I'm not even sure it's me, but like I feel the air on my skin in a way that. And so, like, even thinking right now about how we are, like what suddenly 6 feet means now of connection, whereas it was normally dislocation, but now 6 feet is connection. So
feels like a relationship.
Yeah, and I think a lot. I mean, I overuse this word in a way because it's so meaningful to me right now. But like constellations, I feel like we might be more willing to make constellations because you never see. You imagine the connection, but you really just see the light.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be interesting too, because what of that in between is now touch, right?
Say that again. That's so good. What is that? Say that again. Say that again.
No, I mean, I don't even know what I said, but
you said what about the in between is touch, right?
Yeah. Well, it is literally, right? Like this isn't touch, these are electromagnetic fields, but like, so normally touch is like repulsion, right? Like the repulsion, the way
or
repulsion
resistance
feels, is touch. However, like, so now imagining, dance partners moving alongside or with one another, like there's going to be more sensualities of touch, I feel like, in that space now, right? Because so I don't know, maybe we're going to be more sensual in ways, you know, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Oh, I love it. So
def-
okay, so this is why I love you because I feel like things that I think about, you turn them into like words and make out in the world the things that are like going on in my head. So and I felt that the minute I met you, Natalie, like when we were I mean, just to like break it down, when we actually made this piece of work, I don't even know if you call it a piece of, it was like a moment. It was like a moment
yeah,
in time
it's
together.
like an energy for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
energy. There was like this sense of, and Mary had been like, wait till you meet Natalie. Like you're gonna love her. Like, and and I trust Mary. And so the minute we connected, I just felt like it went, things just started happening and we kind of flowed with exactly, and it had happened, actually it started with Liz Lerman the night before, because it had been this workshop that was so similar. I mean, when I work with Liz, I feel the same way. It's like this, it's so effortless. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like there's any effort. It doesn't feel like there's any effort, which is interesting too when you were saying how are we rethinking about work, right? Like that and I think about that in work when I think about work as an art making, like
Yeah.
when it's working, it actually isn't, it feels so easy. It's not a struggle at all. It doesn't feel arduous. It doesn't feel laborious. It feels like there's just like following this, thing that you're getting to follow. It feels like a treat in some ways. And so yeah, I just think about the way that went down, and that actually really it had me take that back and want to find places of that in my art making that were that effortless, that felt like such like flow and so easy. So I'm curious to hear how that impacted you too, because I don't know, do you normally work with dancers or movers, or is that something that you do?
No, I hadn't before. I mean, this was like my first, like I say, it was my first like real landing at ASU. I was just arriving, and yeah, and I mean, but I'm a basketball player, so in a way, I know space, and I know that I know that there's really no such thing as space and time, but it's kind of like an energy of momentum that's
And
happening.
and hold on one second, because you say you're a basketball player, but I don't think people realize what that really means. What kind of, just share, Natalie, because I feel like when I found out you were a basketball player too, I was like, what? Then my mind went.
Uh,
So
yeah.
I
No, I
don't know
mean,
if you talk about it very much, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I spent, but still most of my life I've played basketball longer than I have not played it, you
I
know.
love it.
But yeah, it's so, and it was really, and I mean, I didn't know a lot about dance, so even like your language is my language, the
Yeah.
phrase, like all of these things, it's not. I mean, I guess if I had to express the things I had been like striving toward or moving toward on the page, which is like, how do I be physical? How do I take the physicality and that touch that I know from basketball, and like
Mm-hmm.
how to hold energy, how to release it, how do I bring that to my page?
Yeah.
And like my work with you, that collaboration and exchange was for me that one of the first steps toward
Mm-hmm.
that, like
Mm-hmm.
realizing that, because one, when we started to talk about it, I was like, wait, like, you know, she's talking about dance the same way that I'm talking about text and writing,
Text.
you
Yeah.
know. And then just to watch it immediately become physical. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of work in my imagination I have to do to keep language, spoken language, speech, written language, like to keep it
Mm-hmm.
physical.
Mm.
But then to watch you just take any of that text and just move it.
Yeah.
And then like what was so beautiful, and you know, and I mean, people can find some of this online, I think, too,
Yeah, and
the
actually, I'll
collaboration.
I'll make sure to share a little bit of it too when
Yeah,
we
so it
when we
was
share.
in a dry riverbed, and so I was writing about water, which
Mm-hmm.
you've, you know, worked in and out of quite a bit,
Yeah.
and so I was writing about water, and then to watch you and the dancers in that dry riverbed
Mm-hmm.
taking those words of
Mm-hmm.
water and moving them in the body of water, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it's like,
Or
well,
in
this
the
is a river.
absence, like what you said, I mean, literally what you said earlier about it being the absence of it that gave us so much, right?
Yeah, and it was like it was not different, right, than the energy of the river. And even like,
Mm-hmm.
so I still remember, like, so the bank, what would have been the bank, had a lot of rocks, like, on a grade down it.
Yeah.
And that's where some of the dancers began, right? You all
Mm-hmm.
began there.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way it was almost like, so in Mojave culture, our creator put a staff into the ground, and the water leapt out, and that
Mm.
became our river. But that same water was sculpted into the clay that became our bodies. And so
Mm.
when I watched you all move from that bank and then become a kind of river, right, with so the language was still happening, and then to watch how you all moved with the ground around the
Yeah.
stones or over the stones, and the soft sand deposits. I mean, it was, for me, it changed language in a way that I had been trying to find but
Mm.
didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's such a, yeah, I mean, and what it showed me is like, speech is just one part of language. Like,
Yeah.
text is
Yeah.
just one tiny, tiny piece of language. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was incredible. Like, I think about it all the time. I think
Oh,
about that, those images, and some of what happened out there. But yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Well, and that the night before, all of the sort of creation and improvisation and generating that had been done by that incredible group of women, it was this, and again, that wasn't purposeful, but it was a huge group of women that showed up for this, for this workshop with Liz and I, and then out of that, they generated all of these movement phrases that felt like magic. They felt like these just like coming together, and people hearing and seeing and connecting and loving one another in this space together. So that's where we had been there that night and then come with this material, but had never actually done it I mean, I had visited that site, but we had never done it in that site. And then we heard, I remember, because before the rest of the women had gotten there, I heard your words, and I was literally like, oh, like, your words were an embodiment of everything I had experienced the night before, just in these incredible words. And then when we got into the space and we became the river. I mean, it did feel like we as a collective body, with your words and with with
Yeah.
the flags, those beautiful, that installation that had been done before we
Yeah, and
got
how
there.
the light shifted. And I mean, I think that's also something that I learned a lot from, or that I feel like, learning is a weird thing, right? Because I don't know that I learned it in terms of like, I know it now, but that experience left and marked and shaped me in many
Yeah,
ways. And,
yeah,
I think a lot about, even where this happened, and in the time, I'm going to say time that it happened. Like, for example, I'm really interested in durational things, like things
mm-hmm,
that are just outside the typical prescribed time.
mm-hmm,
But there's something that it feels so ancestral to me,
mm-hmm,
that to meet someone the way that we met, which
mm-hmm.
was, from friends
Yeah,
who are artists or who appreciate art, who
mm-hmm,
suggested we meet, like,
mm-hmm.
felt something within each of our works that we
Yeah,
should meet. And then that it happened, and I don't want to say it happened quickly, right? That's like the measure of
yeah,
time, but it happened the way things happen, right? Where one
exactly.
energy meets another,
Yeah,
and an energy that was happening well before us, right? Like
yeah,
that river built that riverbed long before we were
absolutely. Any of
imagined,
us.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's, I think, something so just incredible about that I would love to find or create for myself, or just be willing to notice it when it happens more,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Because I think that's like, sometimes art gets taken out of
Yeah,
the everyday. But imagine
yeah.
if, like, I mean, this would be exhausting, especially now thinking of our schedules. But how many moments are like that, when when you just come across something that you didn't know was there waiting, and then
Yep.
you leave it changed. It could be a
Yeah.
song, it could be
Yeah.
but I wish those things were there more often. And I'm hoping that as we shift and as this time shifts us, like, we'll find more ways of that, because I
Yeah.
do feel like those are the natural ways of
They
interacting and
are.
engaging, you know.
They are. And it's so funny that I'm thinking of this, and as you're saying it, it's coming to mind. We haven't performed for the last, 7 or 8 months. Hadn't performed for the last 7 or 8 months, and a month ago we did a project called Rio Reveals. It's a project that was by the LA River, and it was, it was about, again, bringing the stories that live in the river out, and bringing more attention to the importance of, like, taking care of our rivers, and specifically the LA River that's been just abused, right, by human beings, and people have thrown trash in it, and poisoned it, and controlled it by building concrete on each side of it. I mean, it's a river that has quite a history of being oppressed, really. And so it was like imagining what the river would say if the river could speak, and I just think so much. It's so funny because we went from not doing anything performance wise to this experience of getting to work, with a bunch of other artists on this project. And yeah, I don't think it was an accident.
Yeah.
Like, what brought us back into moving and being and connecting, and and remembering that we're creators and that we're responders to is being in the environment, and that it gave us so much space and breath to be able to just, like, feel okay. Like, I felt so healed after that project. I felt so like, okay, I'm like regrounded in a different way. I, like, understand that this is not the end of the world. This is not the end of my world. This is we're going to be okay. There was this sense of, feeling taken care of by the river, really.
Yeah. Well, which is what it's always done, right? You know, and we forget because everything is so controlled. Like you say, the concrete, like I keep thinking of those concrete, like, I don't know. I keep thinking of the movie Grease, where they raced in the,
No, that's the LA River.
Yeah. That's all I keep thinking of.
Yes.
About. But, like that it's always been something we must control.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the beginning, it led us. It taught us where to live. It taught us how to move.
Yeah.
Taught us how to cleanse ourselves. Like you're saying, you felt like, hey, I'm going to be okay. And that's like the way we know to cleanse ourselves is, and not like soap and water, but like the river, because the river, like to imagine if, like, because I think again about anxiety or all the things we've been told about how we don't do things right or what's wrong with us, because we're imagining our bodies as being held here and needing to have a kind of perfection or a kind of
control.
Performance.
Yeah.
But the river is just always moving, and so to imagine to imagine that it's always moving in you. And I try to think about that with my anxiety, as like I fail a lot at it, but like, can I move it? Like, can I take it and just push it back out? Not that it won't enter again, but I think there's something about the rivers that, I mean, one, we're going to have to do a lot of work to fight for them, but it's such a, we tend to think of ocean as being, but the rivers are one conversation of the ocean. Like if the oceans had stories to tell, like, one, the rivers are some of those stories, but also the rivers give the ocean their stories as well.
Exactly.
They all empty out. So
hold on 1 second. All hell is breaking loose. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back.
I heard that.
Guys, what's happening? Please. Maybe put her away.
Is there an animal?
Two animals. So we have so sorry. We have a kitten that we just got, who just joined our family, and then we have a dog who is obsessed with the kitten, and they like And they're actually pretty good friends. Like we've done it very slow, right? But it sounded like there was maybe some kid attacking happening.
Oh,
But it was just excitement. So anyway.
yeah. Well, we have two African gray parrots, and we have a dog, puppy, but they don't like the dog. They don't like anybody. They don't like me either. They're my partner's parrots. But the other day, one of them bit the dog's tail.
Oh no!
And
like
our dog,
bit, like really bit.
Yeah, and our dog. It was more that our dog had her feelings hurt.
Oh,
like she just kept kind of like walking around and like looking at us like, how could you let this happen? Like, how could you let this happen? And like not long before that, one of the birds, I didn't know, my partner lets them out sometimes, like if she's doing like chores or something. So one of them, and they walk like these little dinosaurs, big little feet that are, but she had it in the kitchen and I didn't know. So it was like backed into the corner. So like I went up to the counter with my big old giant bare feet. I have big feet, and it bit my big toe, and like,
oh my gosh,
like a big like crescent of cut on my, because their beaks are sharp.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna mess around.
But I felt the same way the bird felt. Like I was so upset with my partner. Like, how could you let that happen? Like what, you don't you love me? Like that your bird comes first.
You're sicking your birds on me.
Yeah. So, but
that's awful.
They have these backpacks, so you don't hear them right now because they have these little backpacks, and you put them in a backpack, and we put them in the dark so they calm down a little bit. So we'll let them back out after.
I love it. So, you're like mommy has a moment, needs a moment right now.
Yeah.
I need to get some of those backpacks for my kids, like little backpacks.
Yeah.
Quiet backpacks.
Tiny backpack.
Backpack.
Yeah, but it's crazy that because I'm a poet, so I do so many recordings. Like people want you to read or be on a podcast or something that they record, but those birds are in so many recordings.
Just like making cameos left and right.
Yeah, and they talk a lot. Like I just recently learned because I was on a podcast or a radio show, and one of the women who hosts the show is really interested in birds. But she's like, so she was asking me like, well, what kind of birds are they? And I was like, they're African gray parrots. And she said that an African gray is the only bird that's ever asked an existential question. And I don't know what the question is, so I have to follow up on that.
I'm so curious.
Yeah, because they're so smart and they have one of the largest vocabularies. So.
Oh, so they talk? They actually talk?
Oh, they talk. Yeah, they're bad. Well, they bark. So they learned on the res. Our neighbor has a dog that barks, but it was a new bark for them because they're used to our dog. So they make that barking sound that the neighbor's dog makes. So like you see these little birds barking, which like is barking, really funny.
Like they think they're in.
And then our dog will run in there, and then when the dog comes in, they'll say like "good boy" or "good girl," or they'll say a lot. They're like, "Go on, go on."
Well, also has like a little attitude. Go on.
Yeah, they have an attitude, and then they burned us really bad once because they've started knocking on the door. So they make a knocking sound. So I went to the front door,
thinking that someone had knocked.
Yeah, and I just opened the door, and they're like, "Go on, like." So they're really silly.
Oh, I love it.
They're like beautiful birds. They're like these powder gray, kind of silvery with these bright red, like flame orange tails.
Wow.
But they do look like little baby dinosaurs.
I love this. Yeah. I need to meet these birds.
Yeah, they're wild.
When we can be together again, I want to meet them.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep them far away, or just wear
or like maybe even have a FaceTime with them.
Yeah. Wear steel toe boots so they don't get your toes.
I love it. Well, so I have another question for you that I'm just honestly personally curious, is because when basketball, poetry, physical language, word text language, that makes sense to me in terms of those relationships. But I'm just curious, like, did you always write poetry, or was poetry something that, I have a 9-year-old who doesn't want to do any of his writing at all ever, except that he wants to write poetry. No, I never taught him to write poetry. He's just very clear that that's the kind of writing he likes to do. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if like, were you like that as a kid, or is that something that you found later on, and how?
Yeah, I mean, and this, maybe this is where your son gets it also, but like, you know, my family tells stories, and
Mm-hmm.
we were a big family, so you know, we were like 11, and that's kind of how we entertained one another. Because
Yeah.
I don't know how your like television situation was, but
No.
we had a TV, and outside we had one of those really giant antennas that was
Uh-huh.
like long with like a railroad track,
Yeah.
but we used to have to turn it to try to get a
A
station. And
signal.
yeah, and it was hard to turn. So my little
Yeah.
brother and I, my brother John, were in charge, but we would get a running start and try to swing ourselves around it to get a good signal,
I
right?
love
So
it.
and we always joked that God, like we thought it was snowing in every other location because the reception was so bad.
Yeah.
You know, so we
That's
didn't have like
amazing.
our TVs were never working, so we just told stories a lot. And my mom
I
told
love
like
it.
ghost stories, but I didn't find like poetry until much later, like through basketball and being
Mm-hmm.
overseas and just wanting to read something. So being in
Mm-hmm.
countries where English wasn't being spoken and just
Yeah.
needing something, so I would buy any book in English I could find. I read a ton of Stephen King.
Yeah.
Uh, One of the worst, I read a lot of Ken Follett, which
Oh,
is like,
I don't know. I don't even know that.
like politically, yeah, I'm a little bit ashamed. Leon Uris, again, politically, I'm a little bit ashamed of.
I
But I
love
was, you know, I was reading those things, and then my friends started bringing me books that they had used in school,
it.
and
Okay.
it was a lot of like poetry books, Neruda, you know,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
and so that was kind of where poetry first got me. But I think it, you know, we've always been like a storyteller,
Yeah.
you know, and like even now, like we're sitting here like these, I mean, it's what's crazy is that everything is a story, and if
Everything
you,
is a story.
yeah, and if you don't tell it, it's not,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
as soon as you tell it, it is. And
Yes.
it's kind of an amazing thing is that our lives, you know, that's another thing, I guess, thinking about space and this distance, like it's a generous space, because I feel like one way of thinking of it's the generosity of the space, or how we can treat it generously, is that
Mm-hmm.
we're we want the stories. Like
Yeah.
that's how I touch you, is like, tell me a story, like
Yeah.
I want to know what happened. What happened,
Yes.
small things like telling people what you're going to make for dinner is a
Right.
story now, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that feels really lucky. You know, or I guess one way of looking at it as that is that
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're gonna have to up our game, our story game, when we're in person. You know,
Totally.
you know, yeah, it's gonna be something.
Well, it's funny that you say this too, because I mean, we in our family we tell a lot of stories. Also, my partner John is like a total, complete, like riveting story. Like he's the one that when you go to a party, everyone's like, "Tell that one where da like always he's got the stories that. So we definitely, and I do that too. I mean, I love a good story. My we were a little bit different. It wasn't the like what do you call it, antenna situation. It was just that my mother was like, you are not watching TV, period. Like we were just not
Uh,
allowed to watch TV. So we were those kids that like everyone was always talking about what shows were happening or whatever, and my sibling and I were like, nope, we're we
yeah,
we just play and imagine, and now it's funny because I hated it growing up, but now I'm like, it's gave me my life. Like and
yeah,
they're an artist too. My sibling is a composer and playwright, and writes these crazy amazing musicals, and we're both makers and artists, and I think my parents unintentionally created that because
yeah.
again, with that lack, with that absence.
Yeah,
it,
well, and like that's what's crazy, right? Like, I mean, so my students and I have been talking a lot. We talk a lot about touch. So there's
mhm.
this thinker, Karen Barad, who's um, a quantum physicist,
Mm-hmm.
So she talks a lot about touch and like the sensuality of touch. And like I have written a very long series on the hands like
Mm.
several years ago, just thinking about like hands as having, and I mean, this is, I guess, also something I would love to like continue talking with you beyond this, but the fact that even as you're dancing, we might be seeing body,
Mm-hmm.
but how expressive the hands
Oh my
are,
gosh. Yeah.
you know, and like, and
Oh,
so like,
especially in partner dancing. I mean, that's actually where the language happens
yeah,
is through here. Yeah.
it's amazing, right? That like, we think of them in some ways, maybe we think of them as tools or extensions of us, but I feel like my hands are ahead of me a lot of times. Like
Mm-hmm.
my hands might be doing the thinking sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how else do you explain, even like as a writer,
Yeah.
that I'm like, isn't it weird? Like you're starting to write a sentence that you don't really know the end of, and then it happens.
And then
You
it
know?
happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think there's something to like thinking about hands and thinking about,
Hmm.
you know, that kind of space and you know, even like we're thinking digital space, like I'm kind of fascinated with this and haven't known exactly where to take it, but that this, we call this a digital space, which is very much linked to hands, to fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a touch that's happening, you know,
Yeah.
there is like a touch of eye, but also like what happens to my body. So I'm talking to you and we're both someplace else, right?
Yeah.
But there's a way that I exist in this space. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have been more emotional doing Zoom readings and conversations than I have been in person, because it's just me sitting with
Yeah.
myself, and
Yeah.
it's like, wow, like this is who I am, or this is
Yeah.
what I've been through, or this is what I'm possible or capable for or
Yeah.
of.
Mm-hmm.
It's such kind of a strangeness, I guess. So I think a lot about
Well,
those kinds of touches and hands and
well,
things.
I think when you just said that too, it makes me think of when you're in a huge group of people, or if you're in front of people, or you're presenting and sharing with people live, there's a way that you almost feel like you're outside of yourself because you're so in with so much other energy that's happening around you. Like that energy is almost like pulling you outside of this. But in this space, like this is all I have. Like I'm here with
Yeah,
my energy and my body and myself. And even though there is all of this, you know, again, listening and witnessing and connection or happening, it doesn't feel energetically like I'm like having access to it. And
yeah,
so it's really interesting to think about, yeah, to think about how we're having to deal with ourselves in a different way, by being, I've been feeling that too when I'm in, and it's more through like when I'm in conversations, being asked a lot more these days to like be on panels or talk to classes or, you know, share about the past work that we've done. And in these spaces of, again, yes, you're in a conversation, but it's me, myself, and I right here.
yeah,
And also talking about work that's included a lot of people that when usually I'm talking about that work, I'm surrounded by those people or connecting with those people, you know, that there's, yeah, it's really, it's wild. I really want to know this. I mean, I'll text you afterwards, but just say it again. The quantum physicist who you said
uh,
writes
um,
about touch.
yeah, Karen Barad. Uh,
Uh, Okay.
yeah, I think it's
Karen
Barad.
Barad.
Yeah, I can send it to you too. But
Send me that. I would love.
yeah,
I
they,
would.
and so like, I guess one of the things, so, you know, I always say like I dabble in quantum physics, meaning like I'm fascinated by the idea that there's no such thing as touch, or like that,
Yes.
you know, what is the electron field, or what is the,
Yes.
you know, where does the atom happen, and, you know, why does it mean that you can't cut it, and things like that. But you know, like one of the things that quantum physics deals with is also that space is not empty, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like and that, so I guess what I'm fascinated by is that we have to have space between us in order for us to actually like be sensual to one another. Because if there wasn't space, we would not have a perception of touch. And so
Yes.
I think that's something that I'm really wondering about, like that, you know, we will become more sensual after this. Even now we are,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
you know, and it might not be fully developed yet in our ability to put a language to it, but that I can find someone in this space and be comforted. Or that like my day was just kind of meh earlier, and now I'm talking to you and I'm like, oh, like even my voice is raised, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm just
Moving
like,
and
yeah, like I'm sitting
feeling.
here, my hands are below, but I'm just like,
Yes.
you know.
Uh-huh.
But so that even this feels, this is a kind of being with versus being away. And you know, and so that's, I think that's something interesting to me about, like, that there is touch that is not what we've been told is touch.
Yes.
And I think a lot, like in Mojave people used to be spread out across the whole, like, desert valley, the river valley. And they would only come together like once a year or once every couple years, and often for like a funeral or something. But there was always like a yearly gathering where they would come together, and it's called a matakiev. But that when I think about what touch must have meant to them, but also that they still felt connected when they were away from each other in ways that I think we had forgotten. You know, that kind of migratory touch that has always been present, you know. And but yeah, like I think about that matakiev, that coming together. And then another funny note is that we also called it matanyenam, because it was when people come together and hook up. So anyenam is our word for sex, but because it really means to do what the hummingbird does to the flower.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, but it's a
That's
beautiful
so
way
much
of
more
saying
beautiful than hooking up.
everyone came together.
I love it.
But yeah, so I think there is something that this is something, even though for us it feels like a fracture of the ways we know how to live. I think there is something that we're also going to be able to remember of the ways people did things. Our ancestors did things that, you know, arrived us here to be sensual and caring and touching and, you know,
and resilient in that in separation, you know, or in like what we started talking about in loss, right? Like loss being, I'm still so struck with this idea of loss actually, and the space in between allowing us to actually be aware of connection.
Yeah. I think of this like snakes a lot, because we're rattlesnake people and lands. And so, but to think of like that shedding, and it's not easy, right? It's not easy for the snake to become its next iteration. Like it has to work. It has to grind itself against stones. And,
push against stones.
Yeah, you know, like there's something, see, there's a new phrase right there. Yeah.
Push against stones.
Yeah, but there's, you know, there's something about that it's and maybe it shouldn't be, right? It should be, I think, a little bit uncomfortable and painful to become our next whatever it is we become, right? You know, like, which is easier said on either side of the pain.
Yes,
but,
exactly. But that transformation's uncomfortable. I mean, I think again, I don't know if you've seen the Adrienne Maree Brown's new pocket guide of what's happening in the world right now. We will not cancel us, but she talks about that a lot, of this, of like the being comfortable with conflict, or leaning into conflict. And so that idea of we're not, you know, we're not we're just not getting to a space where like that the part that's hard is the part where we're focused, but that also we're not avoiding it in order to keep comfort, because the comfort's actually not moving us anywhere.
Well, and I mean when I think, so before you came and we met, Cassandra and Mary had showed me some of your videos, and so it was like one of the first things I noticed is and I think also I was recognizing something of what I know of tension, having been an athlete, but that that tension is where everything springs from. If there's no
Yes.
tension, nothing, you know?
Yes.
And so
It's
like,
all resistance. It's all resistance.
yeah, or that even that resistance is also a kind of width, right? Like
Yes.
that is like, so thinking of that, like sometimes resistance is simply holding what will next be forward. Like it's just
Yes.
holding it, you know? And so like thinking of that tension is, it's such an important energy, and I don't know what we could make without it, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
It's the premise and the basis of everything that like these original thoughts of contratiempo. Like the
yeah,
contratiempo is that pushback, is that engagement, and that our society has such a relationship with resistance as a negative, and that I get so much clearer as I get older. I think that resistance is love. Like that resistance actually is, it's caring, it's connection, it's, you know, it
yeah,
allows us to be in conversation. And I mean, I always talk about this with the metaphor of salsa. Like if you don't have pushback or an engagement in that way, that pressure, you can't talk to your partner. Like there's no way to actually like be in conversation. It's like two floppy bodies kind of like flopping around, like not
yeah,
having no relationship with one another. And there's which goes back to, again, this like separation. It's going to have us actually be in relationship and in that resistance in such a more evocative way, I think,
yeah,
once we are able to touch and connect. And I don't know Vitamin Belardo, who that is, but makes us want more. Absolutely.
yeah,
Like,
for sure. Well, and even like the con and contra, right? It's like, it's necessary to be
yeah.
with in order to be, yeah, to find that tension. It's yeah, it's really incredible. Have you built anything of movement in this digital space that is like,
Um,
this is the space the movement is in relationship to or in reaction to?
yeah, we've been in a place of, sorry, there's crying happening. I'm
Oh,
hoping. Sean, are you good? Yes? I know. He says it's 1 o'clock. I have 2 more minutes. It's 2 more minutes. Yeah. um, so I think he's out there with them. But we've not, most of the stuff that we've done up to this point has been having old work and kind of like digitalizing it in a way that, you know, being in all sorts of different places and kind of putting it together. But there was one piece called We Will Win. That was a collaboration with Cano from Las Cafeteras, and that was really, again, a beautiful, and again, it was one of those things that was like, it was so easy. Like we got it out within a couple days. It was like, you know, one of those effortless moments.
yeah.
So hold on. This might be my cue.
Yeah, this is that tension we were talking about.
Totally. But Natalie, the IG gods are gonna kick us off anyway.
Right,
so
yes.
I love you so
Yes.
much. I'm so grateful for you to
Gracias.
have this conversation. And
Yes.
thank you. And we'll be in touch about the other
We'll be
stuff.
in touch soon. Okay,
Yes.
ciao.
Much
All right.
love. Ciao.
Abrazos.